In the Viridian expansion, we are introducing Tech 2 Dreadnoughts, which is the first Tech 2 capital ships since Jump Raiders, and they will be known as the Lancer Dreads. This is the first step in an ongoing evolution of the capital ecosystem within EVE, so it gives us the opportunity to introduce new roles, new tools, new dimensions of combat that keep wars really dynamic and increase the strategic depth within EVE. So Dreadnoughts have some of the most clear and well-defined roles within the capital ecosystem. So they really provided us with a really good foundation to get started before we want to expand on other classes. We didn't just decide to make bigger, badder dreads. These ships have a very specific purpose, and they give you a new role to master. So with the addition of the Lancers, the Dreadnought landscape looks a little bit different. So for example, we have Tech 1 Dreads that deal a pretty high damage, and they cost the least to create. We have the Navy Dreads from Uprising that we introduced last year, and they are the strongest of the Dreads, but they're also very expensive. We also have the Pirate Dreads, and they have their own very specific utility, and then we have the Lancers, and they really fit nicely into the big picture. So let me tell you more about the Disruptive Lance, which is the Lancer Dreadnought's new weapon. The Lance Doomsday neutralizes the energy around it when it fires, and given that it requires capacitor to fire, this makes firing them en masse from a single ball of ships difficult, plus you're more likely to hit your friends in such an arrangement. This AoE energy neut effect will encourage more thoughtful placement of capital ships on a battlefield, rewarding the side which is best able to make use of them. So in addition to damage applied, when a target is hit, it prevents warping, tethering, using its jump drive, and reduces remote repair received for 60 seconds. So how much damage does it do? Well, if you're in a small ship, not a lot, because the damage will depend on the signature radius. But if you're in a capital, look out. Now that we've talked about the lance weapons, let's meet the Lancers themselves. The Amarr Lancer is called the Bane and is a Tech 2 version of the Revelation. Its main offensive systems are an electromagnetic disruptive lance and missiles, a first for an Amarr capital ship. The Kaldari Lancer is the Karura, a Tech 2 variation of the Phoenix Dreadnought. The Karura boasts hybrid turret capacity, uncommon for Kaldari capital ships, and a kinetic disruptive lance. The Galenti Lancer is the Hubris, based on the Moros, and is armed with hybrid turret capability and a thermal disruptive lance. The Minmatar Lancer is the Valrap, a Tech 2 spin on the Nakfar, both still vertical. Its offensive systems consist of projectile turrets and an explosive disruptive lance. These Lancers will be in high demand, so it's the perfect opportunity for industrialists to take advantage and configure their supply lines accordingly. We're super pumped to roll these ships out in the Viridian expansion and see what tactics emerge from their use. See you on the battlefield.
Wow. Holy shit. And the only thing I can think of is the sheer amount of hubris that is about to be on grid.
Hubris. I wish they'd call the dread Hubris instead of hubris, but
yeah,
that's money.
Come on. The sheer amount of hubris on grid. You can't.
Yes.
Now we see what you did there. You see exactly what you did there. We're just choosing not to acknowledge it.
The shit posting war would be so far up everyone's ass. Oh, it seems great though. It seems great, let alone I'm gonna be flying in my Bane, sitting there screaming like the Dark Knight Rises. Okay, Batman.
Now, the memes that will come out of just the ship names alone are nearly endless.
It's so great. So great. They're great. But yes, T2 Dreads. Welcome to Theta Thursday, the Tech 2 edition. We've got Dawn.
Hello.
We've got our Arcan, right? That's the correct.
Arcanderous.
Arcanderous.
You can just call me Arc.
Dyslexia does not do well with your name.
That's all good. Just call me Arc.
But welcome to the Tech 2 edition of Theta Thursday. It is the 25th of May. Jesus Christ, it is almost summer. I can't
Basically
believe
is.
it. It still feels like October 2022.
Why? What happened in October of 2022?
Nothing. I just like that's the last blip in life that it feels like,
You need some more blips in your life, then I think.
Yeah, no. The Tech 2 version of Mifune, there is none. There is only me. Blips and chips, Dragon, 110%. You know what we could do with 3,000 Flurbos? We could go to Blips and Chips. But, yes, Tech 2 Dreads. They are interesting. Let's see, where to even start is the real question. Where to even start on the topic of T2 Dreadnoughts? Because there's so much. There's so much to go over.
So I think you got to start with the new weapon, the lance. I think is probably the more unique aspect of all of the dreads. And
Yeah, that's actually the thing that's like, what, like, how is that part? The dreads themselves, I don't think, are as a big a deal.
yeah, the dreads themselves are not anything new. The lance is really the only new weapon that, or really anything new that's coming out of it is the lance itself and the effects that come with it. If you take that away, the dreads are basically just reskinned T1 dreads with different properties for their resist and a couple of different weapon systems. So I would say we start with the lance weaponry and go from there.
Fair enough. So with the lances, if I understand the dev block and stuff correctly, they apply E-War of some kind. They can prevent tethering and scram people so they can't warp out and stuff. Is that what I'm gathering correctly from the dev blog?
Yes. So from the dev blog, it says this includes temporary preventing a target from warping, tethering, using their jump drive, while also causing a 50% reduction in remote repair. And on top of all of this, they also do damage and AoE damage as well. And it's all, kinetic, therm, EM, and explosive, racially based.
God, it's like I am so happy to see like some kind of E-War be introduced as something new. Because if there's anything Eve needs is more E-War and better E-War.
See, I would agree with the better E-War. I don't necessarily know that it needed new and none of the E-War that it's adding in, aside from the tether,
No,
it's not new. The tethering is really the only one that's new out of all of that. Well, and the remote repair, I guess. But
right, and it's
you
a
could almost
really
argue that metaliminal storms added that in.
well. The problem with storms, right, is that like my biggest thing, because one of my good old Eve friends who came back right around the time that storms came out, he kind of touched on that a little bit, and like the biggest thing with the lances and stuff that's gonna come, like when you're looking at things from the chessboard perspective, right? When it comes to these lances, they're going to be unexpected. It's going to be the trump card, the fucking Shadow Realm card, whatever the fuck you want to call it. And when Storms first came out, everyone was like, holy shit, maybe this will really shake things up depending on if you have a fight inside or outside of the storm. The problem with the storms is that the storms are calculated, right? But as a fleet commander, when I'm looking at the bigger picture, I'm gonna know whether or not I am heading into a storm, right? I'm gonna know that before we even get there. So I'm already gonna adjust my fleet comp accordingly to deal with that storm and the players that I'm fighting. When it comes to these dreads, the biggest thing you're gonna get is spy intel saying that the hostiles are forming a dread fleet, but you don't know if it's going to be Tech 1 or Tech 2 dreads, because
Sure.
the only people that can see the fleet comp are the FCs, right?
Sure, but what I was trying to get at was the storms themselves. Yes, you're absolutely right. You can predict where a storm's going to be at, but the storms themselves were the ones that introduced the EWAR effects of reduced logistics remote repairs, and so that was where I was saying it's not necessarily a new EWAR that's added in the game. Now it's just a effect that can be applied by the players themselves in a very specific situation. One of the people in chat had asked, does it prevent or break? And they said that it prevents tethering from happening. It does not break tether. Breaking tether would be truly groundbreaking. That would
Yeah.
seriously mess things
There
up.
would be a lot of dead titans or a lot of people not
Yeah.
sitting on a
On
structure.
dock.
AK. Yeah.
But the thing that people get confused about this tether, and to kind of add to that, the thing is that in present day Eve, the only person that can prevent you from tethering is pretty much yourself, right? Unless you detether and then get targeted, right? If I'm sitting on the undock in a Titan and someone wants to come kill me while I'm still on the Keep Star, I have to detether first, and then they can prevent me from detethering by tackling you, or they cannot prevent me from retethering unless you're bubbled and something else, right? But if I unlock all targets and do nothing for 30 seconds, I retether at the snap of a finger, right? But with these dreads, if, let's say, another Pandemic Horde Titan gets caught off the undock, you could fire one of these lances after he breaks tether, and it prevents him from retethering up while we're shooting at him. And that's kind of like the key thing with that, is that it's that in normal fights on a structure on the defending side, I can choose to stop engaging altogether and be tethered 30 to 60 seconds later. But these dreads can prevent that from happening.
They can. However, you kind of hit upon one of the key points. Is you have to have a dread. Number one, you have to have a T2 dread in range, ready to go, and ready to drop and fire. You have to be in siege. It looks like there's a short spool up time and everything. The number of things that have to go perfectly right in order for that to work in the way that CCP seems to think, it's a pretty long list. And that's kind of one of my issues with these, is that they're so situational, and chances are you're going to be operating in heavy tie-dye. How well has this been tested? Is this going to work, or are we going to have another NHO situation where somebody tries to do something fancy and then it doesn't work because CCP thinks?
No. See, that's the thing. I'll expand on that too. Is that when I first watched the dev blog this morning, that was the first fucking thing I thought of. I was like, so what you're saying is NHO 2.0, NHO 4.0, attempt number 37. Just that amount of planning and checkboxes to hit for that to happen, right? And the second thing I thought of was exactly what Bayan brought up in chat there, is that if it done right, it could probably break supercarrier Skynetting out of the fucking water.
I tend to disagree a little bit, because, again, you got to look at the fact that it's only 60 seconds long, and in tie-dye, the chances of you being able to pivot and accurately get a fleet onto those carriers, you're going to have to pull some serious strings, and I question the viability of that tactic. Can it work? Yes, certainly, possibly, it can work, and it could put a dent in Skynetting. I kind of hope that it does. I think that Skynetting it's an effective tactic, but it's a kind of cheap tactic at the same time. So I sincerely hope that we are right, and that it does break the Skynetting meta that seems to be going on. I just question whether or not it's actually going to work, because, like I said, you've got to have so many things that fall into place. You've got to have a dread that survives long enough, and I feel like the counter to this is simply, okay, cool, we're going to Skynet, but now we're going to put 5 or 6 Titans on grid with those, and the second a T2 dread pops up, blap it,
Yeah, but you wouldn't just send one T2 dread. You would probably send a couple or more.
See,
you would have it just mixed in. You would have it mixed in, and people would have to make an overview to specifically select the T2 dread.
No,
and by then,
Don,
it might be too late.
That's the problem, is that the T2 dreads would need to be solo. Like, the same kind of tactics that were used in Enho would have to be used with the Tech 2 dreads, right? They have to be strategically warped in. They can't be in a ball.
No, but you could have them. Okay, so I know that you're trying to maximize obviously surface area with the lance per se, right? To hit as many targets as possible.
No, not. Oh, excuse me.
Not
to maximize targets. It is a downside to the T2 dreads that by firing the lance, it will drain capacitor from all surrounding ships. So you mix a T2 dread and a ball of T1 dreads, those T1 dreads are going to find themselves with no fucking capacitor.
Yeah, I mean, especially if you're jumping them in, you're already minimized capacitor. And yeah, most dreads nowadays are fit with cap boosters and things like that to try and inject as quickly as possible. But yeah, it makes, because of that AoE energy newt effect, it makes it very difficult. And that's where CCP keeps saying, you have to be really strategic about how you place these. And it's like, well, that doesn't really work when you're jumping in. So you either have to have them pre-staged in the system, jump them in another location and then warp them somewhere, and hope that your positioning works, or you're just going to have to accept that, you're not going to have a whole lot of cap to start off with. So again, it just makes the proposition. I'm not saying it can't be done. I'm saying that it makes the proposition of what we're proposing extremely difficult.
Exactly.
I just don't get why it would matter if the T2 Lancers were in your dread ball already or not.
Because the thing is that when they activate the lance, the drawback to activating the lance is that it sucks out all of your dreads capacitor. And
do we know how much it sucks out?
Not yet, because we haven't gotten values from CCP yet. We've just gotten a description of the mechanic. We haven't gotten any actual value.
That's right, it does suck out cap.
But it does and will suck up cap from all other ships around it. So it's a really bad fucking idea to put these in a ball.
Yeah, and I mean, I think you could probably safely get away with 3 or 4, but then again, there's also the cost. No, certainly. I mean, you're never going to want to field. I think just
dreads.
Yeah, I think that number one at that point just field Titans. This is something where I could see, a 5-to-1 T1 to T2 ratio being effective. But again, then it becomes a question of, we know that if we do a tactic like this, we're going to be sacrificing 2 or 3 of these because the Titans are going to get them in order to get a single shot off. Is it worth it? Or is it worth it to just say, screw it, we'll just use Titans and super carriers like normal,
Well, that might be the case for nullsec. Who knows how that's going to play out, and we can only speculate. But wormholers have already decided that these are the pristine king now. In the small gang capital aspect, it's over once one side puts a T2 dread on grid. It's over at that point.
Now, I would agree. I would say that as far as power projection in low sec and wormholes goes, yeah, T2 dreads are absolutely going to be game changers in some of those situations. Particularly in wormholes. If you can get a T2 dread into somebody else's wormhole and bring that into a fight, that is a huge deal. Now, I will clarify for the record, I am not a wormholer
Now,
at all. So,
I may have only been a wormholer for a month, but I'll tell you right now, you're not bringing a dread into an eviction. At least not at first. You're not bringing, maybe for like the final timers for stuff, but not for your everyday eviction fight. Because when it comes to wormholes, especially in C5s and C6s, pushing a dread through the wormhole immediately takes half mass. You know, when we are rolling our static hull, we take a fax and we shove it in cold, shove it back hot. Hole's rolled. We have a carrier, go in hot, come back hot. Done. Take a dread even, shove it in, probably takes about 1/4 mass, a little bit less than half. Jump it again and roll it, right? So you would have to seed, like when it comes to evictions, you'd have to seed, though you would have to keep hull control, and then during that hull control period, you would have to seed dread pilots in there. So it's not going to be one of those things where you just are fighting one day during an eviction and a T2 dread suddenly jumps the wormhole. No, it would be something that would have to be pre-staged and preset for the fight. So that's why I think on an offensive side of wormhole space, T2 dreads aren't going to be used until like the final push for all of the glory.
I can definitely see that. But again, you know, if you're talking about something that's a game changer for a battle, you know, when you need it most, then yeah, I would absolutely consider taking that opportunity and jamming a T2 dread through. Because if it gets even one shot off with that lance, that fight's over, basically.
Especially when it comes to damage application on paladins.
Yeah, because the damage that it does, you know, I guess I didn't watch the stream earlier, but from what I heard, the damage of the AoE effect does scale with sig radius, so
Yes.
Well, yeah,
somewhat
just
effective
like
on
the lance.
battleships, but not terribly effective on anything else. But those E-war effects do become super critical, and I feel like, especially that 50% reduction in remote repairs, that's wow, that's one that's going to have some impacts on some fights.
Oh yeah. I mean, we affect fights as is with Zernitras. When we want to turn the tide of a wormhole fight, we use Zernitras nowadays, because basically what will happen is you'll have the entire fleet refit for web power, and if a Marauder sieges, that's it. Zenitra's got perfect tracking and it just dies. You have a ship that is not a Marauder, that is 100
Perfect tracking. Did we talk about how Zernitras can't hit the broadside of a barn?
That's if you have actual transversal. If you are stuck in place due to a Bastion module and you have 0 transversal, the Zenitra almost always applies.
Almost.
It can miss occasionally, because you want to know how to beat a Zenitra that's sitting on a grid like that? You bump it. You literally burn at it and bump it. That's all you gotta do. But otherwise, if the Zernitra is sitting there undisturbed, man, like, it's got perfect tracking on a sieged Marauder. It's great.
So yeah, in theory, you know, especially in a wormhole, you know, you're facing a Marauder fleet. You drop a T2 Dread in the Zenitra. The Zenitra, you know, applies the damage. The T2 Dread applies the E-War effect through the lance, and you know, you've got a significant change. Yeah. So, you know, yeah, again, I can see it being very specialized in those aspects, you know. But again, where I question its effectiveness is in some of the larger null sec, particularly fights. Similar goes for low sec. I've seen a number of low secers say, "Oh, this is the new meta for gate camps or hunting jump freighters and things like that." I'm like, okay, I doubt that. I can see how it would be effective. I just don't think that it's going to become a commonplace thing to see these, And that kind of gets to my next question for the two of you is slightly more in the economic realm. How viable and how many of these do you think are going to be produced? I mean, obviously, we don't have specifics on what it will take to produce them. We know that it's going to take the T1 whole plus T2 parts.
The cost?
So the thing is that T1 dreads are already, I wouldn't say scarce, but building T1 dreads is like nobody's fucking doing it because capital industry has been fucked for almost 2 years. They have to fix the industry. They don't necessarily have to fix the whole industry, but they have to at least fix building T1 dreads to be just a little bit cheaper. Right now, your average T1 dread is sitting at 4.5 to 5 bill, which is the same for a fucking carrier. If you move Tech 1 dreads down to the 2.2 to 3.0 bill range, then they are comfortable. And that's where they need to go in order for T2 dreads to be viable. If I'm no industrialist and I could be dead wrong, but just knowing what I do know is that since the Tech 1 dreads are going to be needed to build the T2, everyone's going to start wanting to buy T1 dreads. And while they're still kind of profitable to build, the margin on building them is not large in any capacity. It is sometimes, like, hell, it's cheaper to buy a fucking Zenitra than build one yourself right now. Building one yourself takes 10 bill and people are selling them for 8.5, 7.2. It's cheaper to buy them. So what's going to happen is that you're going to run out of fucking supply, you're going to have high demand, and it's going to make T1 dreads even more expensive, which then is going to drive the price of T2 dreads even higher than expected. So it's like, if you want it to flow nicely, we need to fix the industry of T1 dreads to be cheaper.
So right now, the only T2 capital ship in the game is the Jump Freighter, right? And those sit roughly, 10 to 13 billion, give or take a little bit?
They sell for about 13 to 14.
So where do you think the price point would be on a T2 dread?
I would think the price on a T2 dread comfortably is about 12 to 15 bill. Right? Because then it also fits in line with everything else. Right? If you have Tech 1 dreads that are 2 to 3 bill a pop, they're throwaways, they do the little damage ball that CCP wants them to be. You have Tech 2 dreads that are 10 to 15 bill, they're the beefed up things. You have the Navy dreads, which are perfect for their price point right now, sitting around 7 to 10 billion, right? So you have 2 to 3 billion for a Tech 1 dread. 7 to 10 for Navy dread, 10 to 15 for a Tech 2 dread. Then you make the jump up to like 30 bill for a super, and Titans are just fucked anyway, right? So it's just like it fits that timeline really fucking well, especially because Marauders are practically a billion, right? So you could even go further down the chain. A bill for a Marauder, 2 bill for a Tech 1 dread, 7 bill for a Navy dread, 10 to 15 for a Tech 2. It fits that timeline so nicely.
Yeah, I would somewhat agree with that. Don, what are your thoughts?
About the cost of these things?
Yeah.
Well, players need things to spend money on. I think it's going to end up sitting the same as Jump Freighter market, unless they make some adjustments to the actual market. I also don't know, like, it's going to be very, like, I feel like it's going to take some time to see how they work. And obviously, we're going to have to get into a big tie-dye brawl to see if they actually work in tie-dye. There's going to have to be some testing on what the nuding's like. Like, I don't know how... I feel like they have a lot of value because it's basically like a mini Titan. But are you getting enough value for the cost that they're probably going to be? Because they're going to die. Like, these things are going to die. So if they're jump freighter cost, and I expect it's going to take the same kind of idea from a freighter to a jump freighter to build it, like, is 10 plus billion worth possibly catching a couple cap supers? Maybe, and maybe a Titan would probably be worth it. But if you caught like a couple supers with it and maybe only killed one or two, is it worth it to use 3 or 4 of those dreads? I don't know.
I would agree. That's a similar concern of mine, is that, the price point for the value on grid, because like I said, I feel like, just like the pirate dreads when they first came out, became instantly the first target to go after. You would just throw as much tank on them as possible because you knew that the second that thing landed on grid, every Titan in range was going to go, ooh, juicy target. And so again, very similar aspect with the T2 dreads is you're going to have to decide whether or not the pain of losing that is worth the gain. And generally speaking, I just don't see... The Lance is cool and all, I just don't see the value unless the price point is much, much lower on these. And I'm talking like in the same, like vein as pirate capitals right now. I don't see them being worth the... They're certainly not going to be worth the damage and the utility that they supposedly provide. And I think that goes for every area of the game.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's a very confusing thing because we all know how fucked cap prices have been for a while, and it just seems like CCP is completely ignoring it, which I totally get because they're trying to flesh out capitals, and it's kind of the same thing with scarcity, where the overarching idea is cool, but you're physically slowing down the flow of commerce in order to make these changes. And it's really fucking annoying that we can't try your new shit if the flow of commerce is disrupted.
Yes, that the scarcity did have a pretty significant impact on that. And I think the entire galaxy is still, even several years on from scarcity, still kind of trying to figure out things. And I know people are still burning through stockpiles of minerals and goo that they've had from, pre-scarcity times. So some of that has balanced out, and I do think that overall, we're starting to get to that point where economics are a little bit more balanced. But the introduction of something like this has the potential to really tip that chain and cause some pain points. Goo prices, especially, I would imagine across the board, are going to see an increase simply because people, whether or not the dreads are viable in combat is almost immaterial. People will build them simply to say, I have one. And that alone is going to drive demand. And so we're going to see that shift. Now, the real question will be, is that going to cause a long-term shift in Tech 2 prices across the board, simply because now you have same amount of goo that's being produced now, and more demand for it because now that you've got Tech 2 dreads? Or is there going to be a new sort of outlet that gets introduced? They have. It seems like there's additional Tech 2 capitals that are on the way. Dreads were just the first starting point. So there's a potential here for this to go well beyond just the T2 dreads.
I mean, yeah, I look forward to seeing more T2 capitals. Um, I think in order for it to work though, like you said, they really have to look at the economical perspective. But the more and more I can never get out of my head the one stream that CCP did in the middle of scarcity where it was Burger, Convict, and Rattati talking about why they did what they did, right? And I can't help but think that CCP is applying the same mentality here, is that they want to make all these changes. They don't want the changes to to shatter the fucking market. And so in order to do that, they felt like they have to stop the flow of the market in order to make those changes, right? Because what was it? I think somebody did the math, and while the scarcity changes sucked, and like the actual execution of the idea sucked, but the math works out that if CCP just randomly switched the Rorqual button in the middle of 2019, the market would have never recovered. And while it's a slow process to recover from the hit of scarcity, I think that's kind of better than an outright. I think a little controlled, forced recession is better than an entire unexpected market crash. And I feel like we're still kind of going through that. I think we're still in that era where CCP doesn't want Tech 1 dreads to be 5 billion, but they have to be because otherwise the market would just die. And even though the market's just going to die anyway, it's one of those unintended things where it's like, well, we tried to make it so that the market would do this, but instead it's doing that, right? And I think, like, from scarcity all the way up to today, I feel like that's what it is. I think it's that CCP is physically trying to slow down how industry works so that they can make all of these changes without dramatically ramifying the market as a whole. Because what is it? CCP could make dreads fucking 2 bill tomorrow and everything would be fucking great and normal. But they aren't done with their changes yet. So when they get done with their changes, then they flip that switch and everything goes back to normal. That's kind of like my cautious optimism on the whole thing, if you get what I'm saying.
I do, but really the issue, I don't think the issue is the price of T1 dreads. I think the issue is the price of Moon Goo and how that relates to what goes into building the Tech 2 dreads.
Well, see,
Because the the pain on the current dreadnought setup is the gas and all of these other things that you got to throw into them, like the T1 minerals and everything. That's all fine. I would honestly hope that they get rid of some of the gas and make building Tech 1 capital ships a little easier in that sense, and then you can ramp up that gas and everything and the moon goo for the Tech 2 capitals. To me, that's a much more linear progression of production.
I mean, yeah, I think I think it's more of a bigger picture than just the moon goo for them, to be honest, because they haven't touched they made the change with moons that you don't get normal ore out of moon goo anymore, but they never actually changed the value of moon goo itself uh, uh permanently, right? Because the thing was is that when it came to changing capital production, it was reliant on the PI, not the moon goo. The moon goo is one of those unexplained unexpected variables of things like a shortage of moon goo, a shortage you know, not getting as much moon goo because of the rorical change that needed to happen. I feel like that is just sort of the unintended consequence of what they did. And I feel like the main thing was is that in CCP's mind, the light switch for capital production is not moon goo, it's PI.
Well, it's PI right now, but that's exactly what I'm saying. Is that it's about to be Moongu as well, and the rest of the T2 market is potentially going to get more expensive because of that. And I'm not sure that that's a full. I mean, I could be completely wrong here, and it could
Right. And I'm
only
no
end up being a
industrialist, so
small blip on things.
I'm no industrialist either. So take everything I say with a grain of salt. This is just how my brain works when it comes to trying to understand spreadsheets in this fucking game.
Well, I mean, I think one thing we can all agree on is that CCP doesn't necessarily understand their own spreadsheets.
No, I mean, yeah, you're not wrong.
It's very true.
You're not wrong there. But yeah, I definitely I get what you're saying, that Moongu is definitely going to be up on that list now, which it is a very concerning thing. But I feel like that can change, right? If CCP were to flip that light switch on PI, I feel like domino effect, Moongu would no longer be a problem.
I mean, it all just depends on, if people feel like these dreads are going to be viable game changers, and that they're going to build enough of them to significantly impact the market. Yeah, you're going to start seeing a shift in Moongu materials move away from sort of the regular, hack production and stuff like that, away from that, and move into things like the capital production.
Who's even using hacks anymore? That's all I gotta say.
Nobody. But even then, Moongu is still used in Paladin production and everything. Now, TFIs have apparently swarmed nullsec for no goddamn reason. I still cannot tell you why it's TFIs instead of Megathrons.
Because they're very strong.
Well,
they're strong and tanky. Much tankier.
You know what else is tankier? Megathrons. You know what else is tanky?
No, they're not.
Well, Maelstrom's not tanky. I was going to say, what? Can we bring back the Maelstrom meta? That's the real question.
No. TFI very strong, very big. Much damage, much tank. Pew-pews.
Pew-pews.
Or is it missiles? I don't know. What is the difference between these guns?
TFI is what? Artillery and cannons?
Then it's a pow-pow.
Yeah, it's a pow-pow.
Pew-pew is lasers.
Bring back Hellcats. Yes, Commander Starscream.
Fast cats? Or what is it? Fast dogs and slow cats?
Yes.
I never got to enjoy that capital meta. That would have been fun.
That was definitely, I was around for that, and that was the first time I ever used a capital ship was as a Hellcat. So
I'm going to predict it now. The T2 Dreads are going to be a nothing burger for the first about year.
No.
Beyond simple gameplay of like snuff dropping to prevent a super from tethering or something, right?
Hear me out. Buff tier 3 cruisers. Bring back the T3C.
Ew. No.
Beam Legions for the win.
Like, Legion's fine, but the problem is T3s are too good at everything.
They're good at everything if you fit them for everything, right?
Yeah, exactly. Have you ever had to fight a T3 fleet that, like, they only have 50 and somehow you still can't kill them?
Yes.
You have 250?
Yes.
It is awful. No fun.
No, that's great. The underdog winning. That's what you want.
It's not an underdog. It just means they spent more money.
Yeah. That's how it should work, Don.
No. I don't like it. Because you just sit there and you go, well, I can't do anything. Time to leave.
Don, do you know what it's like to fight in a small gang when everyone is flying 5 billion?
Oh, you've been in a wormhole for like a month.
Yeah, well, you can't bitch because I deal with that every day. Oh
Yeah,
my God,
after you've done it for a year, then we can talk about that. And yes, I know what it's like to fight in a small gang versus a much larger group and not be able to do much because unless you spend a bunch more money.
And that's what you do. You turn around and you spend more money than the other guy. I mean, I don't see the problem with it. This sounds like balance and harmony to me, Don.
It's still not fun for me.
it can definitely be a pain in the butt. That's for sure. Now, but we're not talking about Tech 3 cruisers today. We're talking about Tech 2
Fair enough.
capital ships.
Fair
So
enough.
we've talked
ADHD
about
wandering.
we've talked about the Lance. We've talked about some of the economics behind the Tech 2 ships. Let's talk about some of the more banal things like the visuals, the Lance visuals, the new ship visuals, and things like that. And then finally, I want to talk about the weapon changes because I know there's some people that are pretty hot about the weapon changes.
I mean, when it comes to a visual perspective, I'm a little bit disappointed.
I agree. I feel like these
What did
are
you want? Did you want them to like add wings to everything?
No, why would you take the model of the T1 Dread anyway? Like, you gotta add some
Okay,
flair
so
to it, right? No.
what does a mutant look like?
Compared to a
it looks like
Rupture,
a rupture.
it's
Yeah,
got
Okay,
more
and
stuff
what
on
does
the side.
what
Like
does
it's
a Moa or an eagle look like?
a Moa,
looks like
but
a
like
basilisk, right?
What does
Oh, wait.
what does an Ishtar look like?
no. But here's the thing: is that
And what
those,
does a
they're
what's the
different,
Amar
Don.
one? But
They're
they still look
different.
the same with different colors and maybe
Right, but
an extra little panel here and there.
the T2
I don't know why you
Dreads,
thought this was gonna look any different.
the T2 Dreads look exactly the same. Like, bro, if I put the Bane and the fucking Revelation side by side, the only way I'm gonna be able to tell is by looking at my fucking overview. Like, holy shit.
They're well, the Revelation's bright white and the Bane is black. So, you know.
I mean, as far as the ships themselves go, I actually don't have a problem with the Tech 2 variants. Like there's some subtle differences between the Tech 1 and Tech 2 versions. And I think that's okay. Like Don said, they're very much in line with how a lot of other Tech 2 ships look compared to their Tech 1 counterparts. I don't have a problem with that. I again, it's this Lance issue. That's where I have the problem. I think the Lance visuals look boring. I think that it's like, oh, it's a giant beam that's shooting out from your dreadnought. Like,
Have
it's
you
not
ever
exciting.
seen a lance?
I have. I've fired a
You
lance.
do you know what they look like from every ship that shoots it? They're
Yeah,
all the same.
they're all the same. But that again, that's
So,
kind of my point.
you know,
Is why
you
are
got to
we
give it to them. They
paying?
changed the color on this one because on the Titan it's all yellow. On this one, it's the whatever corresponding group color is supposed to be. So,
But
just saying.
didn't they at least they changed some of the Doomsday's effects, and so uh, I feel like the Lance effects for Dreadnoughts could have been different. Like if we're asking, we want to see advancement as we move along in these, patches and everything, and all I feel they did was they just copied the exact same effect from Titans and then slapped it on Dreads and the T2 Dreads and went, yeah, it's good enough.
So, what if you were a developer? What would be the cheapest option to roll out new content to hungry little hordes? Would it be A, create brand new visuals using your art team, or B, reusing the same code you already have in game and slapping a fresh coat of paint on it? I'll let you do the math.
I'm not from an economic standpoint, absolutely, but that's kind of my point. CCP just they raised the price of the game a year ago or two, and if that's what we're getting for the increased price point, well, that's kind of shitty.
You'll like your T2 supers, or you'll take your T2 supers and you'll like it. It's literally gonna be just different colored like Nixes and shit. When we finally get the Actually, do you think they'll do T2 Titan or T2 Supers? I would
think they're
assume
going to do
Supers.
T2 carriers.
I think
The
next thing is going to be T2 carriers, and
Probably.
honestly, there's actually been a lot of speculation, especially with some veteran players of mine that I know that are kind of retired. When I was talking to them about power creeps and the introduction of T2 Dreads, one of the things that they said was literally bring back the old motherships and make them the T2 carrier. Like the same bonuses, the same effects that motherships had before they got turned into supers. copy and paste that and make that the T2 carrier.
I just want a T2 mining ship, a T2 capital mining ship to complement the Rorqual.
I thought
Yeah,
They don't even
it.
like Rorquals.
Why not make the
What makes you
Rorqual-
think that they're gonna? What makes you think they're gonna give us a T2 version of a Rorqual?
No.
Absolutely,
Better.
I absolutely don't think they are. I'm just saying that's what I personally want.
I want.
In all
I want
honesty,
a SOE Titan. That's what I want.
No, well, SOE Titan, I want to. But whatchamacallit, the thing is I feel like the Rorqual should already be the T2 ship. Like, it should be the Orca as the T1 and the Rorqual as the T2. That's what it should be.
Yeah, no, I want a Nestor Titan that is strictly focused on Logi, and it doomsdays your own fleet, giving a huge spike of HP to somebody that it shoots.
No, it would be
an anti-doomsday.
It would be a phenomena generator, not a doomsday.
Well, it would have a phenom too.
Anyway, to comment Commander Starscream, yes, let's bring back Sino doomsdaying, Sino lancing with the dreads. I'm down for that.
I mean, I feel like that's actually in a way kind of what the new lance is that it's, you know, without the Sino piece, basically.
Well, the main part of it.
That was the biggest thing about Sino Doomsdays, though, is that you didn't actually have to be on grid.
So
yeah, and that was broken as fuck.
That's the dumbest mechanic I've ever seen, and
Well,
they lasted a decent amount of time too.
The dumbest mechanic you've ever seen is landmines. You can't lie.
Well, I've never seen landmines. I've only ever heard of them.
You can go do the reserve bank keys because CCP placed landmines all over that grid.
No, that sounds stupid and unfun.
Bring back landmines while we're at it. Fuck it, I'm down for that. I'm down with surrounding my iHub in fucking landmines. Mix that.
There are so many mechanics that were in this game that were so bad that took them forever to get rid of. But then, you know, they also got rid of stuff that was cool. Like, god damn it. Anyways, we are almost at the end of the show. We've only talked about dreads the entire time. Would anything else happen this week?
Well, do one of you guys want to talk about the Alterari situation?
I mean,
what happened there? I missed it.
Okay, so Arcaders, you want to do it? Well, there's more to it than just that.
I actually don't know the full story other than...
Okay, I will tell it. So just the story is Alterari feigned drama of being, you know, of leaving Goons, then getting blacklisted because he just wanted a break, and we, you know, he got all upsetty because we, you know, didn't let him have keys anymore and removed his roles, blah, 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 right? So he runs off to Horde, and Horde's like, yay, we have stolen Imperium's, like, main FC, woo! And then they, like, cuddle up with him and schmooze him and whatever not. Well, I think, last week, Alterari posts in the P-Horde Discord, like, hey, by the way, guys, I was a spy this entire time. You handed me everything I wanted, and I'm going home now. Bye! And left and came back. So, I did think it was odd that I did think it was odd that Alterari left, but we're all like, okay, whatever. And
I mean, it didn't honestly.
And he brought Mist back with him, so we have Mist now. Who knows how long that will last, but we have Mist.
I know Mist fleets are now in Delve, except on the other side. So as far as the Alterari situation goes, like maybe this is a little bit of tinfoil hat, but I honestly almost wonder if he really did leave Goons for, very specific reasons and wanted to change a pace. I could absolutely see him wanting a change of pace, getting over to Horde, and then suddenly going, oh, this isn't the grass isn't greener on the other side, and then going back to Goons and saying, hey, how can we make this work for me to come back? That's just tinfoil hat conspiracy on my part. But that almost to me seems a much more reasonable situation than the story as given.
Yeah.
I could believe either way.
Yeah, I mean,
I could see
at
it
the end of the
either
day, it
way,
doesn't
and
really
it's
matter.
yeah, no. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter. Who knows if he's just doing his own space roleplay? And I hate to call it that, but that's kind of what it kind of is. Like, who knows whether or not that's his actual reasoning? Like, if it was that 4D chessboard, or if that's just his little player story as to why, and if he's separating those two, you know.
Yeah,
Mhm.
exactly.
Well, we'll see how things go. I hope that Mist has fun dying, and I hope that he brings the pain over to Horde. I don't know. We are collecting a weird grouping of FCs. We've got PGL, we've got Mist. There was another one that I was like, what? I can't remember. Maybe we'll get Billy next. I don't think that would be a positive, but we could do it.
Maybe you'll get Pittsburgh back.
Pittsburgh's too much of a dick to like. Like
he and
I can talk about Pokemon just fine, but he's just such like a rude dick.
Who would you rather have done, Pittsburgh or Nolak?
Nolak and I had a great time. Now I get it, a lot of people don't like Nolak, and I understand why. But I hung out with Nolak not necessarily every day, but practically every day for like 3 years. So
hold on, I gotta point out Commander Starscream Baltic 1 coming back to Goons, please.
That would be pretty funny, actually.
That would be fucking amazing. Come back and be like, yo, where the fuck's my top train?
well, unfortunately, Baltics, while being good at some things, they're just not good at what we need them to be good at. So, and we're all richer. So, but that is let's go ahead and wrap up the show. I have people who are waiting for me. So, I think we had a nice chat tonight. Arcanders, we appreciate you coming and hanging out with us. You were lovely, and of course our stream people were lovely as well. So let's start it off with Arc. Go ahead and do final thoughts or shout outs for the week.
First off, thanks for having me here. This is the first time I've been on a streaming show like this, and I had a lot of fun. Hope to be back as a guest again. Again, really interested to see where T2s land. I want to see more details from CCP on exactly what's going to take to build these, if they're going to have any further refinements in the overall manufacturing process, and certainly if they decide to introduce additional T2 ships. I think all of those have some potential. I would love to see some tweaks across the board, but I'm cautiously pessimistic in a way. But maybe that's just me. So we'll see where things land and go from there.
All right, Mifune, any final thoughts or shout outs for the week?
Yes. This is the last time you'll be seeing me in this house. I'll be moving this weekend into my apartment. So that'll be fun. You'll get to see the mess of me packing up, and next week you'll get to see the mess of me unpacking. So that will be fun. But otherwise, I hope everyone has a good weekend. It's gonna be fucking pouring rain here in North Carolina at 50 degrees, so it's not gonna be too fun for us. But summer is coming. Get your barbecues ready. Bust out your swimsuit from last year and hope to God it still fits you on the waist.
That is the positive of spring, is you always get an excuse to go get a new swimsuit.
Yeah, right? Like, honestly. Who the fuck doesn't...
One more thing. It is Memorial Day weekend, so a big thank you to all of our veterans and active duty military out there, no matter what country you're from.
That's not Memorial Day, sweetie. That's Veterans Day.
I
mean, yes. Thank you to all of our people, but they have their own day.
Yes, I know. But regardless, I wanted to say thank you to veterans, past and present, like myself. So
okay.
Now, don't forget, guys. This weekend we do also have Push to Talk coming up on Saturday. I'm not sure if the meta show is going to be this week because this weekend is Vegas and Brisk is over there.
Vegas isn't until June.
I thought it was this weekend.
No, it's like
No, they're
June.
doing it's some like independent thing. I think they're doing.
Yeah, like there's some people probably meeting in Vegas.
No. There's Northeast meetup maybe. I don't know. Brisk is going to something and won't be here this week, I think. So I'm not sure if Meta Show is going to be this week. So stay tuned for that. Follow INN on Twitter and stuff like that for updates. So we got Push Talk, we got that, and then we have Theta Thursday next weekend. If I get up and this weekend and next weekend. Stay tuned a little bit too. It seems a lot of you guys enjoyed me and Turbo Feed doing Wormhole Wednesdays, dicking around and stuff like that. So that might continue depending on whether or not the move goes smoothly this weekend. And finally, don't forget, we don't have permission to raid, but don't forget to go over to Rampage. Currently, Merkelchin is sitting down with CCP Swift, all about the new dreads and stuff. So if you want to talk more about T2 dreads and the whole new expansion coming, go check out Rampage. But other than that, good night, everybody, and have a good weekend.
Night.
Night all.
Good weekend.